Hey guys, let's get more news about Steelers, but first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Steelers named potential suitor for former number 1 overall QB. The Pittsburgh Steelers completely revamped their quarterback room this year by adding a former first-round draft pick, Justin Fields, and a Super Bowl winner, Russell Wilson. But on October 9, Bleacher Report's Christopher Knox suggested the possibility of the Steelers making another addition at quarterback with Bryce Young. Knox named the Steelers one of two potential suitor for the 2023 first overall selection. Young might also interest the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have a functional starter in Justin Fields but have no quarterbacks under contract beyond this season, wrote Knox. Fields is still young enough to be a long-term solution for Pittsburgh. If his play slips, however, Young could be the next former first-rounder on whom the Steelers take a flyer. The Carolina Panthers benched Young after Week 2 this season. That was about 17 months after they traded up to number 1 overall to select the Alabama quarterback. In addition to the Steelers, Knox also named the New York Jets a potential suitor for Young. Young went one spot ahead of C.J. Stroud at the beginning of the 2023 NFL Draft. But Young hasn't experienced anywhere near the success Stroud has. As an NFL starter, Young has posted a 2-16 record. He's completed under 60% of his passes, with 11 touchdowns versus 13 interceptions. He has also averaged only 5.4 yards per attempt. The Panthers hired former Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator Dave Canales as head coach to help develop Young. But after 2 weeks this season, Canales pulled the plug on Young, replacing him with veteran Andy Dalton. Through 2 games, Young significantly regressed in completion percentage and yards per attempt compared to his rookie season. He also had 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Since his benching, pundits have speculated that the Panthers will move Young before the NFL trade deadline. On one hand, it would make sense for Carolina to move on. But the Panthers gave up so much for the right to draft Young, it also seems unlikely that they would throw in the towel on the 23-year-old already. To acquire the 2023 number 1 pick to draft Young, the Panthers sent 2 first-round selections, 2 second-round picks and wide receiver DJ Moore to the Chicago Bears. Obviously, if the Panthers were to trade Young now, they would receive pennies back on that original investment. The Steelers are an interesting possibility for Young due to a couple reasons. The team's quarterback situation is far from settled, having lost back-to-back games. Entering Week 6, the Steelers are ranked 27th in passing offense. On paper, Young has the talent to help in the long term, and after his benching, he's a cheap reclamation project. Young would also give the Steelers a quarterback set to be on the roster in 2025. But the fact the team's quarterback situation is so unsettled might deter the Steelers from adding to the chaos with a former number 1 pick. Wilson could potentially return to start for the Steelers at some point over the next couple weeks. If that happens, Fields will move into a backup role. That would leave Young, if he was on the Steelers roster, without much of an opportunity to improve in practice. Number 3 quarterbacks don't receive a lot of repetitions while preparing for games. Knox's proposed hypothetical where Young slots in on Pittsburgh's roster as Fields' backup sounds appealing. But it can't really happen while Wilson is still on the roster even if he isn't starting. Assuming the Steelers sign Fields to a long-term deal, perhaps the team could pursue Young in 2025 after Wilson departs in free agency. But there's no guarantee Young will still be available. NFL reviewing George Pickens' controversial "I Black" message in Pittsburgh Steelers Week 5 loss. George Pickens and the Pittsburgh Steelers had an extra chip on their shoulders heading into their Week 5 matchup against the Dallas Cowboys in primetime. The Steelers had one of the best records in the NFL but had been coming off their first loss of the season, a 27-27 heartbreaker. Over the years, players have used their "I Black" to share a personal message. Sometimes it's a Bible verse, someone's initials, or jersey number. but last Sunday for George Pickens, it was perhaps what could be seen as a warning to his opponents, or a reminder to his quarterback in the huddle. Pickens had written, "Open F, ing always in silver ink on his eye black draped across his nose, stretching from cheek to cheek." His decision not only caught the attention of cameras broadcasting the game, it also drew the ire of the NFL league office. League rules prevent players from wearing, displaying, or otherwise conveying personal messages either in personal writing or illustration unless such message has been approved in advance by the league office. "We're going to go out on a limb and say no one who shares a workspace with Commissioner Roger Goodell approved this message in advance." Now, Pickens is facing potential discipline by the league, which could involve a fine. Meanwhile, his head coach, Mike Tomlin, appeared to be clueless about what Pickens had written on his eye black. "I don't know what messaging you're talking about regarding his eye black." Pickens played a new career-low 34 snaps in Pittsburgh's loss. Yet, he was still targeted 7 times but only caught 3 passes for 26 yards. However, he's still the Steelers' leader in targets, receptions, and yards this season. If he is fined, we won't find out until Saturday, when the NFL typically discloses that information via their Game Day Accountability Report that comes out each week. Report: Steelers still in running for Davante Adams as field narrows. The Davante Adams trade rumors have been quieter this week than initially expected. Last week it became clear that the Las Vegas Raiders were looking to deal Adams after he officially requested a trade. Many thought a trade could happen early in the week, but we are over halfway through the week and there still hasn't been any action. According to The Athletic's Raiders reporter Tashan Reed on X, along with Vic Tafur and Diana Rossini, the Pittsburgh Steelers, New Orleans Saints, Buffalo Bills, and New York Jets are still in the running for Adams while the Kansas City Chiefs, Dallas Cowboys, Baltimore Ravens, and Washington Commanders are out. The Las Vegas Raiders are in talks with several teams about a potential trade for receiver Davante Adams. The New York Jets, New Orleans Saints, and Pittsburgh Steelers are among the teams who remain interested in acquiring Adams after reaching out to the Raiders, while the Buffalo Bills are monitoring the situation, according to league sources, Reed wrote for The Athletic. According to multiple reports, the Raiders are hoping for a second-round pick, plus additional compensation in return. They are also hoping to avoid paying any of his salary for the remaining years on his contract. It doesn't seem like many teams are willing to meet the Raiders' current conditions, though it should be noted that Adams' trade request takes some leverage out of their hands. The Raiders would need to have a lump sum of cash on hand to pay down Adams' salary, Reed and Rossini wrote. That might have been an issue for owner Mark Davis in the past, but the Raiders' business has improved dramatically since relocating from Oakland to Las Vegas in 2020. It would seemingly behoove the Raiders to use their resources to sacrifice cash to garner a stronger return for Adams, but they haven't expressed a willingness to do so. The Steelers, Ravens, and Saints would all either need the Raiders to pay down Adams' salary or create significant cap space by other means to make a trade feasible. The Raiders are reportedly fine waiting if the offers aren't to their liking. The Steelers could make the trade happen, but they would need to either restructure Adams' contract, have the Raiders pick up some of the tab, or create cap space through other methods. For a financial breakdown of what the deal could look like, check out Dave Bryan's article from last week. It should also be noted that the Jets and Saints are both going through other circumstances that could have an effect on the trade taking place. The Saints just lost Derek Carr to an oblique injury that could hold him out for multiple weeks. The Jets just fired their head coach. Some think that could increase the likelihood of a trade, while others think it has slowed down talks for now. There is no doubt that acquiring Adams would elevate the Steelers' offense. They have gotten very little out of the passing game, especially from all the receivers not named George Pickens. Pairing Adams with Pickens would create a very strong duo of receiving threats for Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. And you fan? What do you think of the situation of Davante Adams? Leave your opinion in the comments.